All right, all the content on this channel is just for educational, informational purposes. You punch the buttons, not us. We are here just to explore the cosmos and see everything that these great developers are building. All right, let's go ahead and get into it. Thank you guys so much for joining us on the Byte Show. This week, it has been an actually insane week on-chain activity. It's been a very meme-worthy week. So there's been a lot of entertaining stuff happening on the chain. Evan, thank you so much for joining me this week. How you been, man? I know you disappeared on me last week. You doing all right?
Yeah, it's been a tough journey. As you can see, I'm still deep. I'm still 40,000 leagues under the sea here in my ship. So if my internet is spotty, we just continue to dive deeper and deeper. The pressure's building up inside my ears. And yeah, just trying to stay up with the cosmos. Watched your show last week, or watched you on my show last week. And it was very good. A non-intern coming on and chopping it up with you. Appreciate it. Excited for this week with Squid Router. I actually saw it, I can't remember exactly who it was, but there was a presentation going on at ETH Denver. Fig, were you a part of that?
Yeah, I think that might have been me. At Interop, I was on a panel, did a workshop as well. It's on YouTube actually. You can see the workshop.
Oh, hell yeah. So you guys know each other. That's awesome. How was ETH Denver? Did you guys did you get much exposure with different teams that are building throughout the cosmos?
Yeah, it was amazing. I think people are really realizing like the power of multi-chain and how important it is. And yeah, Interop, the conference that Axelar put on wasn't just the Axelar ecosystem. It was just everyone from Interchain. It was like really exciting place to be. So for sure.
That's awesome. I wanted to get a little bit into what kind of the vision is behind Squid. I know everyone hears like kind of the concepts of doing an interchain build or building cross chain. I want to hear kind of what that actually means in terms from a building application and specifically when it comes to Squid, because you guys have really found that vein there to really target that cross chain solution and have found a pretty innovative way to do that by utilizing the Axelar stack.
Thanks. Yeah, we went a long journey to work out what the right architecture would be, and we started out in like I first heard about Axelar in late 2020, ages ago now, and we started looking at building multi-chain end of 21, looking at all these different architectures, different like multi-chain yield aggregation, different types of like stablecoin, like interest rate protocols across chain, but I guess what we found is that cross-chain is like really, really hard, and there needed to be a few primitives built at like first to make things possible, or at least like easy. And Squid was one of them. We were close to the Axelar team at the time, and they saw the real need for this as well. And basically, what Squid is as a primitive is the ability to inside your general message passing across chains, you can swap from any token to any token. So the problem is that you can't just bridge and then use that bridge token most of the time. You actually have to bridge it, swap it into the local currency, or if it's an NFT, maybe you have to buy it in a special type of currency, and then you can do your cross-chain call. So there's this bit in the middle, the swap, that's really important. And then the other component which Squid solved is this multi-call component, which we've made generalizable via RSTK. And what you need to do on a chain, like to interact with a Solidity smart contract, you have to approve it first, and then you have to buy the token, and then you probably have to transfer it to the user. And that's 3 calls, which, as we were building originally, we were going to be building like a new smart contract for every one of these new use cases. But instead, we've just got a cross-chain multi-call now, where you can now swap into any token, and then you can just set up your line of calls in ethers, like on the client side, and you can do like anything. You could do single chain. You can now do cross chain. You don't need any like bells and whistles. You can just like code it as you go.
Now, Fig, can you explain the difference, just to stay at a high level here, between the like Squid Router and something like Thorchain? What are like the primary differences between those two?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference is where the liquidity is coming from and the modularity. So the liquidity in Squid is coming from existing dexes like Uniswap, Curve, any of our partners like StarSwap, QuickSwap. And what Thorchain does instead is that in order to get cross-chain swaps, you have liquidity providers provide liquidity specifically to Thorchain's pools. And so their swaps are limited to what they are able to sort of incentivize or collect in their community in terms of the amount of capital that's locked into their system. But Squid doesn't really need any capital. It just routes via Axelar, because Axelar's fully generalized. We can use like Uniswap to swap, or we can use any random protocol on a new chain. It just makes it much faster to scale. So that liquidity model is a big difference. And then the other one is the modularity about you can plug our swaps into an arbitrary transaction like an NFT purchase, or you can extend it in a generalized way, which Thorchain has some ways of calling contracts, but it's not as fully generalized. So yeah, that's where we are really excited by building these like really complex cross-chain use cases. The way I sort of see cross-chain and like the blockchain infrastructure layer at the moment is we're scaling, and all these new rollups and chains is a new it's like a new processor, or maybe a new bit of RAM over somewhere. And cross-chain is just the motherboard being able to, or the internet being able to link up all these different servers and computers. And right now it might be really hard to visualize anything more than just like moving your money over to Avalanche and then buying something there. But I think in the future, what we're going to see is these multi-hop like routes between different modules. Like we're just connecting to Filecoin tomorrow. I think it might be going live. And you can imagine minting an NFT on one chain and then paying for the storage on Filecoin for it to live forever in the same transaction. And the same thing, every time there's a sale, the sale could also send some funds to a contract on Filecoin to pay for some storage. So you can imagine these things building up, and every app chain, every role app has its own role and can be really specific, really good at what it does. And then the multi-chain part is just like putting these components together so that you can build an application which is better than if you were just building on a single chain.
That's actually really interesting to hear, especially the component about how instead of approaching it from a smart contract perspective, where you were trying to deploy specific smart contracts to address certain types of transactions happening on networks, it's really interesting to hear that through the Axelar utilization of the general messaging of Axelar, you guys are actually capable of just essentially streamlining those actions into one simple action. Does that basically make the user experience really easy and just really kind of seamless to be able to use it? So because of the fact that you don't have to confirm so many freaking transactions.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it all comes down to UX at the end of the day. Like we're all building infrastructure, but we're trying to build infrastructure so that the like perfect use case can be found. And someone's going to build Facebook in 5 years on crypto, not Facebook itself, but the killer app of Web3. And it's going to have good user experience. And I think we all experienced this or at least I was using a lot of DeFi in DeFi Summer in 2021. And some of our partners who are using Squid to even just onboard users into their application. These are some Cosmos chains. I think it actually took like 30 clicks to move your assets from, say, like Polygon onto this chain. And like if you think about Web 2, it's the number of clicks that you have and then the number of new pages you have to go to, like the user attrition rate, like it basically goes to zero. So we need to have it at one click, everything in one click.
That's awesome. Evan, do you have anything else before I ask my nerdy questions about the SDK?
Oh, well, that's actually where I was going to go. I was going to nerd out harder than you.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, hell yeah.
Yeah, so you talked a little bit about the modularity and how this can be used. Curious how this works as an SDK, as Joseph mentioned, and maybe even before we look into the more technical aspect of it, like who is interested in using this SDK? What are the use cases for it? Why would somebody want to integrate this into their stack?
Yeah, so the first, I'll start with really simple and then go up to more complex. And there's a real dire need for just moving liquidity around the ecosystem. So a lot of DEXs have used us to expand their single chain swaps to cross chain swaps. But then you have a lot of other applications where you don't even you might not need to build a proper cross chain application. You just have your single chain application, but you allow payments or onboarding from anywhere. And this is where, as long as the user doesn't have to think about whether they're on the right chain or not, it doesn't really matter if the application itself is a cross-chain application or a single chain application. The user through Squid can pay for their NFT or can get the staking product from any chain. And that's where, take a staking thing, for example, say it's a lending protocol. You have your lending pools on one chain, and you have already a single chain ecosystem going. You can make that cross chain just by allowing cross chain deposits and withdrawals into this single chain app. And so the user goes to supply wrapped Bitcoin into the lending pool, and they can swap their shitcoin on a random chain into wrapped Bitcoin and deposit it in that same transaction. So payments is the second part. We've got swaps, and then payments. That's paying for any service, withdrawing from any service. Fiat on-ramps come into that. So that's a really interesting use case where if you have a fiat on-ramp, you can plug it in with Squid and actually enable people to go from fiat to any token in one click. And we're working with a bunch of fiat on-ramps, but that's a cool project, which I think a hackathon team could do, is just linking up an existing fiat on-ramp with Squid and trying to make a fiat to anything. And then the more exciting, complicated things are the multi-call aspect I said. So that's where the Filecoin example, where you have, maybe they buy an NFT from any chain, but then you can use our multi-call to, once that NFT purchase is complete, you send some funds also to Filecoin or to another chain, and you pay for another use case. So chaining these multi-hop interactions, that's fairly unexplored space that we're doing some internally, but I think is ripe for someone to really make a mark in. So those are the things I would look at.
That's awesome. From a building perspective right now, I know that there's an active hackathon going on with Flipside Crypto. There's up for $90,000 up in total prizes, and the grand prize winner can actually get 40,000. In that process of building, what do you recommend someone who's actually participating in the build-a-thon or in the hackathon actually using Squid and actually starting to utilize it? I guess making the decisions between using the API and the SDK as well.
Oh, sure. So the SDK and the API are very similar. I think the main reason to use the SDK is if you're already using TypeScript, you might as well. It basically just wraps ethers and Axios and does all the API calls and the transaction submission and checking for approvals, things like this. And it has the types as well. So you probably want to, especially if you're using TypeScript, just pull our SDK and you get access to the types. But the API is totally fine, exactly the same functionality. We have the basic things you'd expect. So we have a tokens endpoint where you can just get the list of tokens, chains endpoint, list of chains we support, and then a route endpoint where the route endpoint is where all the magic happens. That's where you do you specify the swap that you want, or the bridge or the transfer from token to the two chain. And you can specify slippage, and this is also where you can specify your calls for the final for the destination chain. So you send in an array of calls. I think, and then we have a status endpoint, which is also really useful. What we've done is we've wrapped Axelar scan Axelar Scan is the cross-chain block explorer that Axelar's built, which is great for development. Definitely, I mean, it's like a superpower that Axelar have really over their competitors. Is this Axelar Scan is actually like really good at tracking where things went wrong. If you haven't done enough with your gas payments are like a huge part of building cross-chain. I feel like half of what we do is just making sure like transactions get executed, because gas is treated differently in like in every environment, and learning that has been a large part of what we've had to build. I think with Squid also, like that's another thing we provide is we have done a lot of that work to make execution work based on the gas estimations for different transactions. So with our API, you can specify the gas amount that you want executed on the destination chain for these extra calls that you've done, and we'll call Axelar's API. We do a bunch of other things to make it work, but I think we're also like our SDK and API are really useful for that, for like ensuring execution and saving a lot of the time around gas.
Evan, do you have anything?
Are we gonna do a screen share? Get into some? Is that a part of this, Joseph?
Yes, I would love for there to be a screen share. Fig, if you're willing and ready, we'd love to do a screen share and see how you would even get started with implementing using the SDK or calling the API.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds good. I'm going to pull up VS Code. Just give me a sec.
Got your time. Evan, how you been? I know we haven't chatted in a little bit. Has everything been going all right in your world of building a modular wallet infrastructure? Nope, I don't think Evan heard me. Unfortunate.
What did you ask? Sorry.
Oh, we're breaking up. Oh no.
We're hitting some big waves down here under the sea.
Oh God, man. I told you not to go to Malta to break out Do Kwon. I told you it was not worth it. It was just not going to be worth it, man.
Am I back? Can you hear me? Can you see me? Hello?
Yeah, you're coming back. Yeah,
Hello?
I think you might be in a good little wave spot right now.
We're hitting some big waves here, some chop. What did you ask me, Joseph? You asked me about modular.
Your modular wallet, man. Your modular wallet. How's that going?
We don't build wallets. We build account abstraction as a service.
Okay.
So people like you go out there on the internet and say we're building wallets, and it's really misfortunate misinformation.
I mean, cross-chain account abstraction is okay. Nice. We got screen share working. Okay, so this is the SDK. You can see, so we've got an examples repo, which I will actually, I'm not showing my whole screen, but you can, I'm sure we'll have a link for it later. There's an examples repo with all these exciting things like buying NFT from any chain, like stake on Moonbeam from any chain. But I think we'll just share like the basics of how it works. So, okay, sorry, I've got something in the way.
You're good. Take your time.
Nice. Yeah, so the first thing you need to do, like we'll just go git clone the repo and then do a yarn install. But I've already got the SDK installed. It's an npm package here, and then I've got ethers installed as well. I've got some. This is actually a different script here. Let's see this one. Yeah, that's it here. Okay, cool. So in the examples repo, I'm using .env, so you can set your AVAX RPC endpoint in this .env file, and same with your private key, which I think I just shared. So maybe cut that out in the recording. Okay, so you set your addresses here, and then the amount you want to send. We use this function to just get the SDK. So currently the mainnet API endpoint is api.squidrouter.com, and you can add testnet in if you want to connect to testnet. The liquidity on testnet isn't as good, so just beware of that. I generally test in prod just because I like the risk. But here's the guts of it. So you set up your provider and signer with ethers. Use this get SDK function, which
Okay, so you're declaring basically what's going on the caller chain. Is that the origin chain first, or is that the chain that you're communicating to?
Yeah. So here we go. So the cross chain transaction is going to need to be signed on the caller chain. So source chain is here. In a front end, you'd have like MetaMask connected, and you'd switch chains to the correct chain before you sign. But here we're just going to use ethers. So connect up to AVAX, which is the caller chain, and then set up, get a new signer, init the SDK, and so the main thing to do is just getting a route, and a route is an object which will provide you all the data on a quote going from a source chain to a destination chain, and then it'll return we can look at it, but it returns also the transaction requests and gas data, the call data and target contract which you need to call, basically everything you need to just
everything you need to like actually interact with it. Yeah,
exactly. In fact, let's just pull it up. Pull the route up. Worry about executing for now. That's not right. So
okay, there we go.
This is the route object. So you get estimate here, which is like the quote. It's going to tell you the to amount which you can expect, and you'll notice the decimals are all different because I think that we're probably going to USDC. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, USDC only has decimals. That's all that data is in our. You can map that using our tokens endpoint. If we log all the tokens, then each one has the decimal there. You can do that really easily. And you got the to amount min, which that's after slippage. You can set slippage to whatever you like. I think the minimum at the moment, realistically, if you're doing a stablecoin swap, the minimum is I think 0.4%, and this is in percents, so that would be 0.4%. 1 is fine. Probably lower is fine now too.
Wow.
And yeah, I mean, I think something I didn't talk about earlier, but we have another benefit of using Squid is you get express execution. So Axelar has this amazing feature, which is like Squid's implemented, which allows you to get instant swaps across chain. And currently it's like whitelisted to just Squid. So you'd want to use our SDK to get access to that for now. And it means that slippage isn't as much of an issue because the price isn't going to change very much in like 5 or 6 seconds compared to if you're going from Arbitrum, finality's 20 minutes, and so you need to worry about slippage a little bit more when you're going from Arbitrum. So we've got those, and we also gives you some data around the fee costs and gas costs. Let's like log those. What's inside estimate, right?
In reality, there's not that much in terms of integrating the Squid component into this, because it seems to be just like kind of one function right there, and you just define what the individual components are, and then from there you can actually call that messaging directly into it.
Yeah. I'll get into the messaging part in a sec, but yeah, it's just one function basically, very easy. You got some details about the gas receiver fee and Express here, so I think it's 50 cents at the moment. That's charged by Axelar.
Yeah.
And yeah, that execute call. What's this? That's probably the gas costs. Yeah. So we give you a gas limit which you can use to get reliable execution. Again, it's like it's not being trivial getting gas right and cross chain. So that's another nice thing to use. And then the SDK, let's see, the SDK also gives you this execute route function, which is essentially, I think inside of it, it's probably just a, it just executes using ethers. And I think it might handle approvals as well. So once that's done, once the transaction's done, you can track status too. And we've got a status endpoint, which you can call. And have you guys seen Axelar Scan? Would your audience know, or should I
To be honest,
take a look at it?
I've had limited experience looking at Axelar Scan. I haven't really dug into much what's going on their chain. So that doesn't pass through their chain, right? That doesn't go through. That just goes through the general messaging, or is this actually going onto their chain?
Yeah. So the way this works behind the hood is, or under the hood, is the source transaction gets executed, and then an event is emitted on the source side. This is on like Polygon, let's say.
Yeah.
And then the Axelar chain, some permissionless relayer grabs that event that's been emitted on Polygon and submits it as a transaction to Axelar. And then that triggers the Axelar validator set to verify the message across chains. And then once the validator set agrees that it's been, that the source chain transaction did actually happen, then it emits an event for like verification of this payload, and then it's submitted on the destination chain. And only once that verification has been submitted on the destination chain can you then execute the bridge minting transaction and the payload which you've requested. So there is interaction with Axelar, but it's not like what we're doing. I think you can just think of it as going directly from A to B.
Yeah,
not going through Axelar.
It's basically just like kind of a permissionless like pass on. That's really interesting.
Yeah, it's really cool. I'll stop sharing this one and I'll share.
Okay, go for it.
Scan.
I think we lost Evan for a little bit. He hit more turbulent waters with his Wi-Fi. So I'm not sure.
Is he actually under the US?
Yeah. Oh no.
So this is actually.
No, he's in his basement, but we make a joke that he is like he's like actually on a boat. It's been a reoccurring joke on the stream.
Nice. This is GMP transfers, which is basically everything that Squid does is GMP, general message passing. And you can see this is so useful for building on Axelar. This is the source chain transaction. They show you how much gas you paid as well, or at least this is the gas paid transaction as well. And you'll see some of these, the express thing I was talking about, this one was executed express. So it would have taken 52 seconds going from Avalanche to Phantom, but it took 16 seconds because of this feature. And I can't believe it. It's totally insane.
How does that get executed so quickly? And what chains was that from?
That's for all EVM chains.
That's for
at the
all
moment
EVM
it's supported.
chains. Wow.
Yeah. And like the starkest difference is when the source chain is something with long finality.
Yeah.
Like from, and let's see if someone's used Express recently.
I know that's kind of been like an inhibiting factor of like the actual like cross-chain thesis between like IBC connecting to EVM is just because of the inherent differences between time to finality. And so it seemed, I mean, just from my limited knowledge of how this actually works under the scene, is that this is actually kind of like circumnavigating that in some way. That's actually kind of insane.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, this is one, it's 19 minutes from Arbitrum. It took 6 seconds. And Carver's a Cosmos. It's just totally insane to me.
Wow.
But yeah, really exciting. The way it works is kind of complicated, but you have a wrapper contract outside of the Axelar gateway and inside of Squid. And I might just stop sharing for a second. And what happens is you have a market maker with some funds on the destination chain. So you bridging 100 Axelar USDC and then executing a swap payload, which swaps the Axelar USDC for like WETH on the other side. a market maker can lend $100 of USDC on Ethereum and execute that exact payload like immediately as soon as they see the source transaction execute. And then they register that against a contract. And then once the bridged transaction actually comes through, like 20 minutes later, then it goes through this gate, which it checks first if a market maker's fulfilled it already. And if the market maker has, then it sends this $100 Axelar USDC back to them instead. So they get repaid their loan. And the beauty of it is that if the market maker doesn't execute, then you still get the fully decentralized execution. It's still censorship resistant, like it's still completely modular and extensible as well. It's really nice design. So,
that's awesome. That's incredible. Okay, so now that we've gotten into kind of a little bit under the hood, how you guys actually integrate the SDK, do you have any tips or any kind of guidance for people who are considering building with Squid? And I'm sure that the possibilities of building with Squid are just kind of endless in real terms. Anyone can kind of take this and then figure out what they want to make from it. Do you have any tips or just general guidance for anyone who would probably consider integrating Squid into their project for the hackathon?
Yeah, for sure. So I'd start with just doing payments across chain. So try doing that. If you have a single chain application, like any application, you can essentially do a cross chain swap and then use that application using our contract call feature. I didn't show it on the screen before, but essentially it's an array of calls which you send our SDK, part of the API call, and I'd start with that. And then once you've got that down, I'd think about what kind of like cross-chain flows that might be interesting. Just try and think of different modules, different like apps which could be cool to do in one transaction. Maybe it's connecting like a lending app with like maybe you're taking leverage like on a different chain or something like this. So just try like connecting different modules and different chains, and think about why an app on say one chain might want to partner with an app on another chain. And if there's something they can benefit from that and you can connect them using like Axelar or Squid, that's probably where I'd start. Rather than like fully inventing the wheel, like reinventing the wheel. I'm not sure if there's that as much fundamentally different stuff about cross-chain, though there's some really cool stuff that you should do if you want. But try connecting these modules up, and I start with that. So start with swaps, then do a payment, and then you should, once you've done a payment to like an NFT or something like this, you'll get the gist of it, and you should be able to come up with some cool ideas.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, I think we've had a great time here just chatting about how to even get started and get going with Squid. Do you have any alpha to drop? Do you have any big releases, big integrations, anything massive coming to the Squid team?
I mean, honestly, the Filecoin thing is, I think it's really exciting.
Yeah.
It might be going live tomorrow. We're not sure, but if you can work out FEVM and get in before, like get some tech built as Filecoin goes live and gets a lot of attention, I think that's definitely alpha. Try to work out how to pay for storage and see what could be useful about that. And then more alpha is Cosmos. Any swaps and contract calls will be live hopefully very soon as well.
Ooh.
So really excited for that, because this is where you should now be able to basically call a contract on EVM or Cosmos World just by doing like a tiny bit of JavaScript. And that's where I think composability is going to be really exciting.
Yeah, that's massive. That's really interesting. Just with a little bit of JavaScript, you can do that now?
Yeah, I mean, like basically what I showed you, and then a little bit more. It's
just adding in a little bit more. That's crazy.
Well, yeah. Like you have to format Cosmos payloads a little bit differently, but it's not that hard. Cosmos is I mean, your audience is Cosmos
Yeah,
native, right, as well,
mostly
so
Cosmos. I've been shilling a little bit of like some of the IBC EVMs that are starting to pull up a little bit, like Kanto, and then when Barachain comes live. So I think that there's an
Mm,
inevitability where the IBC world just kind of stops existing as its own like kind of like Rust Cosmosm playground, and I think there's going to be that like unison effect where these two have to find a way to really kind of create that interoperable environment. So that's just my personal
yeah.
take. That's just kind of what I'm realizing
No,
is happening.
100%. That's the thing I was saying, where find a business which is in the EVM world, which could benefit from a Cosmos chain, and then like
Yeah.
try to connect them. Because that's going to be, they're so separate. It seems like the ecosystems like are actually quite separate right now, and
Yeah.
it's going to be a really fun, intermingling of like ideas when they join up.
Yeah, I think that the app chain thesis has just been proven time and time again. I think that the IVC world and just overall the entire app chain thesis is not going to go away anytime soon. But you're absolutely right. There is product market fit by finding ways to translate things existing in EVM and bringing more open liquidity over here in the Cosmos land and taking advantage of just the modularity thesis over here. So huge opportunity
Yeah,
there.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, onboarding into the Cosmos is a big part of what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
Currently, you can only onboard into Axelar USDC. We have swaps on the EVM side, but not swaps turned on in Cosmos.
Okay.
But what I was saying before is you can turn on, like, we're going to be doing swaps on Osmosis and every other
Yeah.
DEX in the Cosmos. So, yeah, you'll be able to get any token and call a contract. And,
That's
on a Cosmos chain.
That's fancy. That is real fancy. So I hope there's going to be a lot more use or a more use for the Squid stack, and actually a lot of builders going out there and getting their feet wet with building with it. If you don't have anything else today, I think we're pretty good to wrap it up. All right.
Yeah, no, I'm good. Thanks so much for having me on. That was fun.
Yeah, no, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you guys so much for joining in on the Byte Show this week. Next week, we'll be having Nolus Protocol, who are also building kind of like a cross-chain permissionless way of actually leveraging assets. So we'll not necessarily leveraging it, just kind of like a lease position, which is rather interesting. It's a different approach, but the rates are really competitive. So we'll see you guys on the next week's episode. Thank you so much, Fig. And if you guys have any questions or have any needs for the resources, I will drop the GitHub, the docs, and also Squid's profile on the description of this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in.